Well, welcome to another episode of Where Medicine Meets Ministry. Dr. Cherie talks faith and facts. Guys, my guest today is a board certified obesity specialist, working with patients individually in the clinic and with small groups enrolled in the diabetes prevention program. Now, as one of only just over 3,000 board certified obesity medicine specialists in the United States. Okay, you need to know that's a small number, and he's part of it. He's been able to use his knowledge to help develop and support programs that reduce the obesity burden. And my God, coming out of this pandemic, we know just how important reducing the obesity burden is, especially to the US population and in particular, Black and Brown people. His focus is meeting patients where they are. And he believes that protecting their bodies with a focus on wellness is key to achieving their goals spiritually, physically, and mentally. What a perfect guest for Where Medicine Meets Ministry. Without further ado, please help me welcome Dr. Tony Hampton. Hey, Tony, how you doing?
I'm loving that intro, and I'm loving you, and I appreciate you because you spent some time on my podcast. So I just want to thank you in advance for that. And anytime we can help spread the message of healing, we must do it. It's our calling, and it's the easiest thing to do. So I'm really excited to lend a voice to your audience, and so that they can hear my perspective. And my perspective is all about getting to the root cause of why we get ill, so we can then do something about it.
And I'm telling you, when somebody says that they want to get to the root cause, they're not interested necessarily in putting on the band-aids, although when the situation arises and all you can do is a band-aid, he's equipped to put the band-aid on. But when someone says, I want to take it at the root, I want to take it at the beginning, that means you want to weed it out permanently, because if we know where it starts, we can stop it before it ever begins.
That's right. And we were
Yeah.
never trained to do that. We were
No.
trained to put Band-Aids on medical
Yes.
conditions and didn't realize we weren't healing.
Correct.
So I had to dive a little deeper and try to figure this out on my own. And once I saw that light shining, I was like, hey, I can do this differently. And ever since then, my patients have been healing.
I just love it. I had some of the same revelation, especially when I was in medical school. The more I learned, the more I realized we used the term health care, but a lot of what we were doing was disease care.
Oh,
Were
yeah.
we really caring for the health? But we didn't really get involved in the health until disease had already manifested itself.
That's
And
right.
so I love the fact that we can now you get into addressing healthcare, keeping you healthy from the start so that we don't have to worry about the disease care later on down the line.
That's right. It's much cheaper that way.
Isn't it?
Yeah,
For the
and it makes sense.
patients, for the system,
Yeah,
overall,
for
it is
everybody.
not only more, it is better financially, but it is also better from a lifestyle perspective. And we're going to
Yeah.
get into that because you're going to touch on some stuff that is going to blow some folks away. So I want to jump right in. Now, have you always wanted to practice as an obesity specialist, or what prompted the desire?
It really wasn't intentional. I think we became numb to seeing our brothers and sisters, heavier than they should be. And you get to a point where you think it's kind of normal. What really prompted it is when I started doing research on diabetes, because my wife was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And so my goal was, can we find an alternative to the traditional medical approach to help her? And although type 1 diabetes, for those who are not aware, you really do need insulin in that setting. So there is a need to have medicine. So I'll never demonize the pharmaceutical industry. We need medicine. We certainly need vaccines during a pandemic, right?
Yes.
So we're okay with that. But I just wanted to find another way. And that's when I said, well, let's look into diet. And from my research, I found that diet was the key. But then I noticed that a lot of diabetics, not necessarily type 1s, but type 2s, were overweight. And so I knew that weight had something to do with it. So my journey kind of led me down this path where if I help people lose weight, they'll probably have an opportunity for type 2 diabetes to reverse it. So that's what got me into this ideal of, helping people with their weight. Now, the obesity board certification you mentioned earlier, and not having as many people are certified. When you have 1 million doctors, you just got, just over 3,000 board certified. That's a little scary. That was my way of saying, I got to learn more. I got to learn more. I got to learn more. And so I learned how to manage obesity from the perspective of a board certified professional. But I'll be honest, I had to really maintain my foundation of nutrition, because even in that training, you learn a lot about surgery, you learn a lot about medicines, you do learn about nutrition also, but the emphasis is a little broader, where my emphasis is mostly on lifestyle. So once you figure out the lifestyle and all the various causes of why we get obese, then you can help people to leave that path that they're on and reverse it into a path where they don't have to, not just for them, but for their kids and the next generation. I mean, it's going to impact everybody, the people at the church. And I joke with my patients. I say, I'm going to buy you a "Girl, What You Doing" shirt, because that's what they're going to be saying to you. Girl, what you doing? Because they're going to look at you and see that transformation.
Correct. You know what? Health and the avoidance of chronic illness should be a family concerted effort.
Yes.
Just like when I tell individuals, if mom or dad or sister or brother gets diagnosed with high blood pressure and diabetes, then that change in the diet practices should apply, and it has to apply to the entire family. There should not be, I'm going to make your dad the healthy dinner, and then we're going to continue eating the very things that contributed to his disease process. That makes absolutely no sense.
No sense at all.
No sense at all.
You just have to
consider our dominoes are our friends, our girlfriend connection,
right.
The guys we hang out with, where we go to church, all of those things. You are right. We fail to realize and or remember that there is a connection with us even beyond our immediate families. So we have the ability to impact so many people.
That's right.
So if you don't do it for you, oh my God, you got to think about babies.
We inherit not just our genes, we inherit our culture, our lifestyle, our behavior. So we need to give our babies and our grandbabies an inheritance of health. And then if we do that, then they'll be here longer, and we'll be here longer to enjoy them. I have several patients that are over 100 and they're doing just fine. Yeah.
Love
several.
It. Yes.
Yeah.
Now tell me this, in your practice, what has been the demographic makeup of your patient population?
It's actually intentional, part of that intentionality, if that's a word.
I believe it is. I use it all the time, so I hope it is.
Thank God, right? So what it is when you grow up on the west side of Chicago, so that's, for those who don't know, that's the, you could argue the tougher side. I think you can make that argument, and you have a large African-American community, and you don't train a lot of people of color to be healthcare professionals in particular. So, 500 African-American men actually go to medical school every year, which is a very small number in a country of millions, 500, right? So there's something about this desire to want to serve that community. So for me, it was like, I really wanted to be a role model. So I kind of leaned towards those communities. So when I first got in my training, which was at West Suburban Hospital in Oak Park, right next to Chicago, I ended up working in an underserved clinic affiliated with West Suburban Hospital called Circle Family Care. And I did that for a little bit. But then when it was time for me to move to a different clinic with Advocate Aurora Healthcare, I purposely was attracted to the clinics that had a larger African-American population. When I became a regional medical director, I was attracted to the hospital Advocate Trinity that had a larger African-American population, mainly to just let people in the community know that you can do this, this is within your reach, and I care about you. And just as importantly, if I'm going to be teaching this healing message, metabolic health message, then I want to make sure that communities that are at the highest risk hear that message. So I'm really excited. So that's so I ended up in that community intentionally, But as I do things on YouTube and other, podcasting, I reach everybody. So I think everybody needs to heal. I just want to make sure that the communities of color recognize me so they can say, hey, I may listen to this guy because he looks like me. And a lot of times they won't listen to people they don't feel comfortable with.
That's exactly was my next question and where I was getting to. And that is, can you appreciate a difference in the recommendations you make and how they are received
Mhm.
and with the compliance when you are dealing with patients who look and sound like you because you become a trusted voice?
Yes. Even when I did a podcast with Rashard Johnson, who just happens to be a 38-year-old African-American male president of Advocate Trinity and South Suburban Hospitals, which is like a aha moment.
38 and
38.
Black?
Yes. So it's
Trinity.
like Advocate Trinity, Advocate South Suburban Hospital. And I'm so proud of him. But I invited him to talk about COVID because I knew that him saying that he was hesitant and understood systemic racism, and then he was able to speak to that, me saying the same thing, that's part of the messaging. So when you do have the gift of looking like a community you serve, they kind of automatically put down some of the guards because there's a lot of distrust in our healthcare system. So that does give me a tremendous advantage. But then I can also talk about cultural foods in a way that won't offend them because I ate this stuff too. So if I can talk about chitlins and nobody's offended, right?
Oh,
But if you
wow.
have other cultures talking about chitlins to a person of color, they may not take it well. So not that they shouldn't be able to do it, but I think that those are the types of things that make it easy. And then I can give examples of the types of foods that I think would be helpful. So I always ask them to share how they eat. And then once they share how they eat, I say, well, have you thought about this as an alternative or a replacement? And it's still culturally appropriate, because what you don't want to do, particularly in a country where systemic racism still exists, you don't want to give them a perception that you're taking away their
Right.
culture. I mean, it's just
Correct.
like, just imagine an indigenous person and you're trying to tell them not to eat the way they've been eating for, generations. That's offensive. So you have to figure out, how do I retain some of that? And the good news is, you know, the types of things I recommend, particularly as you think about keto and low carb, well, you just talk about some type of animal that's not covered with flour and cornmeal and barbecue sauce, and some non-starchy vegetables. Greens are non-starchy, cabbage is non-starchy, string beans are non-starchy. I mean, so it's not hard to, now the cornbread may be a problem, but those are the things I ask them to reconsider. So it's really about messaging things in an easy way that they understand, and saying it from the perspective through the lens that they have. And since you're from that culture, you already have that lens already. So
Correct.
it's really not hard, and just making sure they know you care about them.
Correct. And I want to pause here before I get into the meat, because I really want to focus on your brand on these next few questions.
Mhm.
But one of the things that I want to point out for you and I, both you and I as physicians, have dove in head first into the whole establishment of health equity,
Mhm.
approaching health disparities, dealing with social determinants of health, attempting to address the needs of our community. And when I didn't realize that there was less than 500 Black men who go to medical school each year, I didn't realize that the number was so abysmal. What I do recall is that when I went to medical school, out of 132 students, there was one Black male and me, one Black female. And that
Wow.
was it. And it was that way for many, 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 many years, until I took it upon myself to volunteer myself as a non-paid dean of minority affairs to try to do better with recruitment. If the staff was willing to be accepting, then if you say no, it's open doors, then somewhere either I'm gonna prove you wrong, that people are not attracted to here because of price. People are not attracted to here because it has not been known to be receptive to Black and brown people, because you only always graduate one Black female and one Black male. And so for you and I to be able to be in this field and to take it upon ourselves that we want to do something that will help minimize the lack of trust within the healthcare environment so that our families and the people who look and sound like us will be more open and more receptive to the industry in its totality, because everybody can't come to you, everybody can't come
Right.
to me. And
That's
of the
right.
numbers of African American physicians that we have, obviously we know that there's not nearly enough to cover
Mhm.
everybody. So, you know what, if you're listening to our voice and you are a Black patient and you like, I want a Black doctor, continue that search for the Black doctor. But
Mhm.
if you don't find it, please be sure to follow individuals like Dr. Hampton. Get out there and do some research, find out what other Black doctors are doing and where they are connected to. Get yourself connected in with them, because at least you can now hold on to a trusted voice.
Yeah.
We take on a lot of responsibility for taking that on, but we know that it's necessary.
I think this ideal of being a continuous learner is very key. So, I mentioned before we got started that I was, sometimes you're busy because you're still in school. So for those listening, yeah, Dr. Hampton, do I have to go to school? Absolutely not. But Advocate Aurora gives us money to go to school. It's my money. So I'm going to get my money so I can take that money. And I got my MBA because of Advocate Aurora. I took their, I'm working on my master's in nutrition and functional medicine. But the point is, because we're continuous learners, we can then come to our doctor with more knowledge. And I remember when you did my podcast, you talked about the benefits of knowing in advance. Like when you get diagnosed with breast cancer, somebody needs to see, weigh you and figure out what's going on. What's your risk for getting lymphedema? And before you said that, I didn't know about that.
See?
I mean, and if I don't know about it, my patients with breast cancer don't know about it. I literally sent my, recently thinking about us talking, I sent my oncology lead a video of you being interviewed on a news program. And I said to him, do we have this? So I want to make sure, but again, it's the knowledge. And so if you're a patient, you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be a scientist. You need to just ask the questions. Are these options available for me? And you need to get a feel for those options. Thankfully, the internet and other resources will allow you to get basic information so you can challenge and or partner with your clinician to help you get the kind of care that you need. Let me give one more example. My wife, she don't mind me talking about it, so I won't be breaking HIPAA rules. I'm just saying that out loud. Shout out to the HIPAA. So my wife has had epilepsy, probably since her teenage years, and would have seizures, and that started to advance. So she was having a seizure every month. And what people don't understand is that your threshold for having a seizure is going to change as you have more seizures. So in other words, it's easier to have them. So I knew that based on my knowledge that every month's going to turn to every 3 weeks. It's going to turn to every 2 weeks. And who wants to live like that? So this is the funny part. She had been seeing doctor after doctor after doctor. Her husband's a doctor. Nobody ever said to her, did you know we have brain surgery for that, right? This just happened to happen at one of our large academic hospitals. And we're like, oh, and then all of a sudden we put that on the table. Of course, you have to fight the family to convince them to let their daughter and their, to have brain
Correct.
surgery.
Yes.
But I
That's
knew, and
huge.
yeah, and I was nervous because I said, if it don't go well, they're going to be beating me up, right?
Right.
So it's like, but we had that surgery probably 8 or 9 years ago. And I'm proud to report that since that brain surgery for epilepsy, there's been no seizures. It's just gone. Yes. So it's a gift. And so my point is, if you didn't ask the question, even the doctors, the clinicians have to be curious and do their own research. And if I had lupus, for example, you should know more about lupus than your primary care doctor, because that's all you have to worry about. Like I have to worry about 100, 200 conditions. You get cold-blooded, and then you partner with your doctor. Maybe you're looking at a study and you can't quite understand how to interpret it. Then the doctor can then chime in and say, yeah, this is a study that's based on retrospective or prospective, and they may be able to understand that language better than you. And so I think I'm so happy you brought this up. And please, guys, get the knowledge, ask the questions. And if you have a good clinician, they're happy to receive that information. And then more importantly, they may be busy, but they certainly can do that research later in the day or at the following week. So just give them a chance to take some time to digest it, and they can find answers for you.
Correct. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to ask my next question. Piggybacking on what you just said, I will tell you this, that if you do your research, you're partnering with your physician, you go to your physician, and your physician seems to be put off with the fact that you're trying to learn, educate yourself, and do what's best, and seem to, I got this. You know what? You need to walk with your feet. We are servants. We are good, so that we are God. We are not God. No God here. And so if you get pushed back like that, then you need to find yourself someone else who will partner with you. Gone are the days are the yes, ma'am, yes, doctor, yes, no. They're gone. Listen to me. Watch my lips.
That's
right. When you see the video, you walk. And if you're dealing with something that is life-threatening, run.
And the last thing I'll say to that is no confident doctor will be offended by that.
Right.
And what I said earlier, I'm a family doctor, so guess what? I'm no expert in anything. I'm just good at I'm a little good in everything.
Right.
So I'm expected not to know everything. So so I have to have the courage to say, you know, I had a patient. I'm not making this up, just today, and they wanted to have a procedure, a surgical procedure, but they gave me the names of the two options. I didn't. So instead of me sitting there trying to make up something, I'm like, you know what? That is definitely at the level of the surgeon. And it was like what type of mesh should I have?
Oh,
you know, I mean, I don't know.
Right.
So the point is, be comfortable with that. And then sometimes I'll say, I'm not sure, but you know, let me do a little research so I can at least give you my take, but I still want you to talk to the specialist. So that's the type of partnership you want. And if you're not getting that, as my partner in crime is suggesting, please, please, please consider using your feet.
Definitely. Now, Dr. Tony Hampton has two significant acronyms that are part of your branding, and they are huge.
Yeah.
They are NEST and ROPE. How did you happen upon these acronyms, and what do they mean?
Well, as you know, Doc, if we're going to survive medical school, you better have some acronyms.
Yes.
I mean, they'll give us, don't you remember when they gave us these thick books and say, okay, you're going to have a test in a month. And I'm like, you know, come on, you got to be kidding. Oh, that's just one of the many classes you're in.
Correct. Day one, you're 8 chapters behind in one class.
I mean, are you really serious? So number one, acronyms are our friend. Now, before I actually landed on the rope, I had to start with the nest. Now, before I started my training with functional medicine, I actually had come up with this NEST acronym myself, just because I understood that in order for us to heal people, you have to eat right. That's an N. And I also add intermittent fasting. By the way, Dr. Jason Fong agreed to join me for my one of my episodes in the next couple of weeks. And and for those who don't know, he wrote the obesity code and the guide to fasting. He's like legendary in Canada, so I'm excited about that. So the E is for exercise, and I think most of us knew about that. Most of us also knew the S's, which is reduce the stress and increase the sleep. And the T is for how you think. And so that's where I was at before I started my training. Then all of a sudden, I'm taking my functional medicine training, and I look at this functional medicine tree. And for anybody listening or watching, just search for the functional medicine tree and look at the roots, right? And when you look at the roots, you'll see other things listed that are the root cause of disease. The disease is in the top part of the tree, and the roots are what starts this process. And then I saw trauma. So I added another, so that other T in the nest was trauma. We got to avoid trauma. We're going through trauma right now with COVID, right? It's like post-traumatic stress for most of us. And then you get into the rope. And what I say is you got to climb up the rope to get to the nest. And because we don't have wings, at least,
Right.
physically, we have them, spiritually.
Right. Yes.
Okay. And so the relationships have to be healthy if we're going to be healthy. We have to make sure that we avoid organisms, going back to COVID, and there's good organisms and bad. We have to make sure we don't have pollutants. And as you know, doctor, South side of Chicago is factories everywhere, right? And then you wonder why there's a lot of people with asthma and things like that. Well, just look around, right? And then the E, and I got this again from the tree, emotions, protect your emotions. And then your life experiences, they really affect, going back to cornbread, my life experience says that I can't eat greens without cornbread. Well, is that serving you? Amen. You heard me. So is it serving me? Is it serving me? Yes. And I remember Dr. Hatch, who's on the west side of Chicago, he did when I first started making these types of appearances, and it was with him. I think it was Can TV. Is that what you
did? Yes,
it was actually with the same thing you started with, yes. Right? And so I was on that program, and he was hosting it. And at the end, he said, "Any final thoughts?" I mentioned cornbread, and he looked at me. He said, "They had cornbread at the Last Supper, Doc. You can't."
You can't take that away.
No, you can't. So it was, but that's how significant it is in the African American culture, and it's probably in some others too. Because I know some white folk in the South that's going to eat some, So it's not just about Black folk. But I'm gonna tell you something. It was funny to see his reaction, and I still get tickled when I think about it. So the nest in the rope is my way of reminding my patients that if you do really well in some areas, but you neglect others. And again, I've seen people who were principals, they retired and got off of one or two medicines just because they retired for their blood pressure. I mean, could you imagine that? So
I can.
Yeah. Right.
My previous jobs.
Right. It's stressful. So even as I do the multiple things that I'm charged to do, I try to balance it out. I make sure I have some, literally I have a light right near my feet. That's the bright light for mood. I'll do that in the morning to get my cortisol levels high. At night, I'll put on my blue light blocking glasses. Mm-hmm. And another thing I do, because I interviewed Dr. Michael Bruce, who's the sleep doctor, that's what they call him. And he's on Dr. Oz a few times, but what he said is, if you put the blue blocking lights on, it'll help you increase your melatonin. So in other words, what can I do that's natural so when I lay my head down at 10, my body's like, I'm good, I'm ready. And then I won't spend like 30 minutes in the bed trying to go to sleep. So we're all in the business of optimizing ourselves. And the worst thing anybody listening can do is to spend all their energy on, I'm just going to do my test. I check my cholesterol, it's okay. Now I can go and do bad things. Now you want to ask, how can I make my cholesterol better? And then you do those things. How can I make sure my blood pressure is better? How can I make sure I have more energy? How can I make sure I'm not fatigued? How can I make sure, that's not about just doing your stool test for your colon. It's about, how do I make sure my body's not going to be a place where cancer wants to live? That's what this is all about. And so my goal and your goal, Doc, is to spread that message and then nudge people towards this way of eating and doing those other things. But the beautiful thing is you feel so good. At 52, I feel like I'm 32 because I do these things, not because I have good genes. It's because I do the things that will make it more probable that I'll feel good and be the kind of person I want to be.
And see, what I love about the vision and mission for the Dr. Tony Hampton brand is that, you hear Ness, you hear rope, you hear obesity specialist. So you're thinking that he's going to be focused on nutrition. And I love the fact that you're very clear. You make it very clear that nutrition is not the only area of focus. We need these other areas. And by saying we need to use that rope to climb up to the nest, I love it. So guys, if you're listening and you're watching, you need to appreciate that when you approach a person like Dr. Tony Hampton and you hear obesity specialist, and you may be thinking, oh, okay, he's going to help me eat right. Well, yes, he will. But what is so beautiful and special about this particular physician is that that's not the only focus. right? He's going to remind you that your relationships have to be right, that you have to reduce your stress. I got to make sure you understand how many hours of sleep you need to get at night. I want you to realize, yes, we're incorporating nutrition, but we got to get some exercise in there, right? And I'm not going to push you past your exercise limit based upon what cardiac you can withstand based upon your current weight. So, there's some people that get all excited and say, oh, I'm going to hit the treadmill and I'm going to, but no, you need to go under the guidance of a physician, because you can jump on that treadmill not understanding really what your disease process is and have an MI before you know it.
That's
Right.
right.
And so it is wonderful that we have physicians like you that have jumped into the industry and the mission and the ministry of not just addressing the body,
Yeah.
right?
Just
And
let me
you're
say
not
this.
just addressing it with
You
pharmacy,
trigger
you're
me.
doing nutrition, you're doing
You trigger me because you said physicians like me, right? And I think we're kindred spirits, which is why we follow
yes.
each other. And but I wanted to just pause and say not we, Doug Reynolds, Pam Devine, they started the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners. Okay, so that's fairly new. It's only been around for a short time. I'm Dr. Jason Fung, people like that are part of this. So what it is there are other people out there, guys, who think this way. Why did we say metabolic health when most of these people are, in fact, the guy Doug Reynolds started Low Carb USA. Why didn't you just call it the Society for Low Carb? Because metabolic health is more complete. It addresses, and not only does it address all of those things we talked about, but it also allows for a vegetarian. Because guess what? If you can be metabolically healthy as a vegan or vegetarian, that works too. We just want you to
Absolutely.
be metabolically healthy. So for some people go all the way to the other side and they're carnivores and they're healthy. Then you got other people all the way on the vegan side. So the key is you listen to your body. And when I interviewed Dr. Tim Noakes in South Africa, he did a little historical about why certain cultures eat meat and thrive. He also mentioned cultures that eat grains like the Persians and thrive. So you have to kind of dive a little deep. The best experiment, though, is you listen to your body when you're consuming food and you see what it tells you. And if it's telling you it doesn't like it, that's probably a sign. But if you can get a little historical with it as well, you'll walk towards metabolic health because you'll be doing things that are, in other words, should the indigenous folk be eating the standard American diet, or should they be eating they're hunting buffalo when we came here, and they were thriving. They were tall, they were lean, and then we started giving them, and then we came here, we as in whoever started this nonsense came here. It wasn't me. And
Exactly.
and all of a sudden they killed their buffalo and they had to start eating this other stuff. And that's when so not only did they lose their land, but they lost their health as well. It's
Correct.
deep.
It
Yeah.
is very, very deep. And we are part of the same history. They
Yeah.
were here and they got overtaken and pushed out. We were pulled away and brought here, and without any form of level of economics for ourselves, being totally at the disposal of the masters of the
That's right.
plantation.
That's right.
You ate what was given,
That's right.
and what was provided, period. And you and I both know we would not have been given the best. Why would we have? Exactly. And so now when you appreciate, you add on decades and centuries of, you've now changed the culture. The individuals that were brought over here from Africa, completely different cultural experience. Completely different cultural
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
And I know some of us were to do the connection, were to be able to go back and to our original connections, our jaws would drop like,
That's right.
oh, wow, night and day.
That's
And
right.
so it's wonderful to be able to have someone with the vision of, we want to individualize your care based upon what your lifestyle looks like. So I'm going to take mind, body, and I will add in spirit, because those of you that don't know Dr. Hampton, I'm telling you, this truly he's a man of God who appreciates where you are, and spiritually. I don't say religious or particular denomination. I mean spiritually, because we all have a connection spiritually.
That's right.
And Tony knows how to acknowledge that. and incorporate that in your learnings of what is best for you and your body and your family. Not
Absolutely.
every you and I both know we went to school with people who don't necessarily still agree with that.
That's right.
There's some people that are very patriarchal,
Mhm,
and kind of like, okay, well, this is what I learned in
mhm.
school. This is what's best. This is the standard. What should you should have. And when you give somebody a list, let's say a newly type 2 diabetic, and you just simply give them a list
I know.
of the do's to eat and the don'ts to eat,
Mm,
and you, oh my God. And then just send them on their way. You can't do that. They don't know how to figure that out.
mhm,
If somebody
mhm.
who never liked celery is not all of a sudden going to like celery now, you may say, oh, yeah, but you can put some peanut butter on it. Yeah, but I don't like peanut butter either. Wait a minute. Can we take my food doctor? I tell you what I used to eat. And now can you help me make better choices within what my palate is accustomed to, and now allow me to adjust to a new way of eating.
Yeah,
And
you
you
need
get that. But
you need to,
a lot of us,
yeah,
a lot of docs, when I say us, not me, I get it. But there are a lot of physicians, there are a lot of, I'll say them all, PAs, NPs,
yeah, nurse
DOs,
practitioners, whatever,
admins
right, all of
that
it.
again, but you and I both know it takes work and it takes effort to
Mhm.
be able to see the patient as an individual that's connected to a whole bunch of dominoes, and I can't cookie cutter your care and just make it the
Yeah,
same for all of our
yeah,
patients. It's easier,
we have to listen.
but easy is not always right.
Yeah, we have
Yeah,
to listen. We don't
yeah,
listen.
definitely.
And if we listen better, we would not only hear them and be able to meet their needs, but you actually can diagnose. Patients will tell you what's wrong with them if you would only just listen. And what we tend to do is we kind of hear a couple of trigger words, and we're like, oh, okay, let's write this prescription. But if you listen and listen long enough, you'll hear them maybe say, my stomach's bothering me. And maybe you're thinking, well, you need some medicine for your belly. But then if you listen a little longer, they'll tell you why their stomach's bothering.
That's
So if you
right.
don't address, well, maybe going back to a job, and maybe going back to a relationship, whatever it is that's creating stress, you need to address that. Otherwise, they'll be chronically on medications. By the way, medications that have side effects, and the side effects long term will be more harmful than the benefit. So, so I think that we listen and we hear them, and then we have faith in them. Like, one of the things that also is a problem is that people, they don't believe people are going to do it. They
Hmm.
think that, well, no, they're not going to do it. And the reality is that's just not true, because I see in my practice, people are doing it, and
Hmm.
they're healing, and celebrating their successes is the norm now in my clinic, where in the past it was more about, let's increase the dose, let's adjust, it was never about, my goodness, Miss Jones, you lost another 10 pounds. I think we need to reduce this medicine, or you know what, I think it's time to get off the medicine. And sometimes they're like, are you sure?
Right, right.
I'm like, I'm sure, I'm
I'm
sure.
sure.
So it's been so much fun and such a privilege. And again, you shouldn't have to learn as a patient about these things through a podcast. You shouldn't have to learn about it by reading Dr. Jason Fong's book, or my Fix Your Diet, Fix Your Diabetes book, or seeing a YouTube video I made. It should be something that the health system guides and walks people through. But until they do, we will stand on the rooftops and scream that there's another way, and we're here to guide them. And that's what the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners may be able to help do, is that they're going to, maybe we can then talk to the American Diabetes Association and say, hey, it looks like you got low carb and very low carb as options now, which just happened at the end of 2019, by the way. And we know we have a way to approach that, so we can teach doctors how to wean people off medicine or whatever it is. So in other words, we can partner with these organizations to give them the guidance that they may not have because they weren't in that space, where the people that are part of what we do, that's all we've been doing. so
Correct.
So
Okay.
Dr. Eric Westman at Duke, he's been doing low carb research for 20, probably close to 25 years. So he knows, you know what I mean? So we can use his research and things like that to help these larger organizations do the work they need to do.
Correct. Correct. Now, Dr. Hampton, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, well, I would be happy for people, first of all, to find the Protecting Your Nest podcast. So if you have I always joke with my patients, if you have a cell phone, you probably can get a podcast on it.
That's right.
A lot of my patients are older, they're like, what's a podcast,
Right.
But because so many of my patients I would show them how to do it. And then when I see them next time, it's still sitting there and they haven't touched it. I also realized that YouTube was a good place. So if you search my name, Dr. Tony Hampton, definitely check out the YouTube channel and subscribe. But if you just type in drtonyhampton.com, spelling out the doctor, you will see my website. And I'm partnering with the Diet Doctor. So you'll see LC or Low Carb Corner. I love the Diet Doctor. And I do a monthly column with them. So check that out. And there's also some educational links on the website. So the website is probably the first place to start. But I just want to make sure that people are aware that YouTube, I'll be making hopefully 2 to 3 videos a week and sharing information that way. So I'm really committed to that. So this is a year to really use that avenue as a way to reach people and help people.
Wonderful. And I'm going to leave you with the opportunity to provide any last parting words that you would have for our listeners.
Yeah. Well, I think it kind of speaks back to what we shared in a way. Make sure that you find out where you have gaps. So if you think about the acronym NEST and rope, there may be some gaps. You may be doing certain things really well. Maybe you're eating well, you're exercising well, but maybe it's the relationship. So, I tell my patients, they have books for that, they have
They do.
therapists, right? The
Yes.
5 love languages is one of my favorites. The 7 principles
Oh,
of
I
marriage
love
by
that.
Gottman.
Yeah.
These are phenomenal. So if you're having problems with the relationship, it's probably nothing wrong with that person. It's probably nothing wrong with you. You guys just don't have the tools to be successful. So let's put a little energy. What's 15, 20 minutes a day? What's hard about once a week saying to your partner, what's going well, what's not going well, and you have a conversation about it. So figure out where you have gaps and then use that as something you focus on. For this year, for me, Doc, it's going to be meditation. I have not mastered meditation yet. So that's going to be, I mastered sleep last year and I did intermittent fasting the year before. So this is my year for meditation. And then you'll walk towards the type of health that you've always wanted. So that would be my final thoughts.
And with that, thank you for listening to yet another episode of Where Medicine Meets Ministry. Dr. Cherie talks faith and facts. Thank you so much, Dr. Hampton.
Thank you. And you keep doing this wonderful work. And we will be making some videos together. I promise I'm going to be reaching out to you.
I can't wait. We know I'm so camera shy. I don't know if I can do it. Thank you so much.
No